Hi bookish besties, my name is Brittany. This is Rescues and Reads. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you are new, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And if you're already subscribed, as always, I appreciate your continued support. Thank you for returning to another video. Today, it is time to do my January TBR. I am so excited because it is finally time to start the next round of the My Bad TBR game. If you remember, I successfully completed my TBR gameplay in October after nearly 2 years of trying to complete it. So that was very, very exciting. And I didn't want to start a new round until the start of the new year. So that is exactly what we are going to do. I have made some slight changes to the rules, nothing too drastic or anything, but I'm going to go ahead and quickly get into those before we get into the gameplay and also before we once again draw from the challenge cup, which has returned, and I will also explain that in a moment. But before we get into all of that, I have to address the elephant in the room, or more specifically, the elephant on my face, and that is the lovely gift of a fever blister that I was given on Christmas Eve. It started to develop Christmas Eve night, and it was full-blown by yesterday. And unfortunately, mine get fairly large, and when I do get fever blisters, they tend to swell all the glands around my face. So if you notice that I'm talking funny, if I'm smiling with only half of my face, if I'm slurring my words and talking like a drunkard, that is because I have this lovely, wonderful fever blister, which is the gift that keeps on giving for about 2 weeks time. And unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of not being able to film during this time. I have to film, otherwise you are not going to get the content that I've promised you for January. So we are going to do our best to ignore it and get on with our day. So now that that's out of the way, let me go ahead and quickly run through some of the changes that I've made to the game. Now, I haven't changed the board at all, and the reason for that is because I actually created a new board this year. I think it was towards the midpoint of the year, and those actually take me quite a long time to make, so I wasn't even going to try to mess with the board. It'll probably be my board throughout 2025 at least, but eventually I will get tired of the prompts and want to shake things up a little bit, so it will eventually change, just not in 2025. The primary changes that I made were in terms of the rules for the cards that I draw. So let's go ahead and quickly run through them. First, we have the ace card, and that is staying the same. With an ace, I can either choose to move a pawn out from start if applicable, or I can move a pawn forward 1. So that is not changing. With a 2, so previously with the 2, if I drew 1, I had to go ahead and draw again to add an additional book. And we're doing something similar, only in this instance, I have to double up on the prompt. So if I draw a 2, I can once again either choose to move a pawn from start if applicable, or I will move forward 2. And if I move forward 2, whatever prompt I land on, I have to select 2 books to satisfy that prompt. So I am still adding another book to my TBR, but I'm doing so in a little bit of a different way. Cards 3, 4, and 5 are all staying the same. 3 and 5 are straightforward forward movements, and 4 is a backwards movement. So it's a little bit of a punishment in that way usually, because I'm going backwards on the board rather than forwards, so I'm getting further away from my home base. For the number 6, that actually used to be another straightforward movement. I would just move forward 6, and I am just going to move forward 6, but this time my patrons are going to help me decide what I read. Whatever prompt I land on, I'm going to compile a handful of options that could satisfy that prompt, and then I will post it on my Patreon Discord, and my patrons are going to get to choose what I select. So I'm just going to compile those in a list and let my patrons choose. 7 is going to be the same in that I can either move 1 pawn forward 7, or if I have 2 pawns of the same color out on the playing field, I can split the move, so I can maybe move forward 3 and then move forward 4. That's typically only going to be strategic if I have a guy in the safety zone and I need to get him into home base. So maybe I'm only 2 or 3 moves away from getting him into home base, so I can move him 3 or 4 and then move the other pawn forward. Now with 8 is another straightforward movement. I would just move forward 8. However, if I land on a prompt that I'm not super excited about landing on, I can choose an option instead of selecting a Patreon pick, or as I'm calling them, a Pawtron pick. So essentially all of my Patreons at the Dotties tier and above have the option of giving me 1 book that they absolutely want me to read. And then every single month I'm going to pull one of those picks. So within gameplay, if I draw an 8 and I don't love the prompt that I've landed on, maybe I'm really not in the mood to satisfy it, I can go ahead and select another Pawtron pick for the month. But that might not necessarily be a good thing either, because I know that my patrons are doing their best to select books that they do really want me to read, but that are also a little bit outside of my comfort zone. So that could definitely be a mixed bag. Number 9 remains the same, a straightforward 9 movement. 10 is somewhat the same, and then I can either move forward 10 or backwards 1. But if I do select to move backwards 1, I have to draw again. Typically, the only reason why I would choose to move backwards 1 is if the prompt that I'm going to land on in 10 spaces is not favorable to me. And so I've opted to move backwards 1. And so as kind of a little bit of a punishment for choosing that option, I would have to draw again and see where that takes me. Now let's go ahead and get into the phase cards. These were the ones that I was really excited about changing because I felt like the system that I had wasn't really working. I was stockpiling jacks and kings like nobody's business because I wasn't actively using them. So I have definitely changed up most of the phase cards and what they represent. So for the jack allows me to use the same book for 2 different prompts. So currently I'm not allowed to do that within my TBR gameplay. I'm not allowed to select one book for multiple different prompts. If I do pull a jack, I'm going to be allowed to use the same book for multiple prompts. And I am going to allow myself to carry this into multiple rounds. So let's say I pull a jack and there's really nothing that I want to double up on in the current round of gameplay. I will allow myself to transfer the jack to other rounds of gameplay. So maybe if I have a book that could double up, I will then whip out my jack and go ahead and use it to double up. The queen is going to remain the same. The queen is immediately going to put me into my safety zone. It's not going to put me into home base, but it is going to put me into my safety zone. The safety zone spaces remain prompt free. I am once again going to be pulling from my challenge cup anytime I land on one of those. And if I draw a king is no longer a get out of jail free card. Honestly, I wasn't using the kings at all. Kings were basically allowing me to skip punishments that would come with maybe not completing my TBR for a month. But instead, I think what I'm going to do is if I put a book on my TBR and I don't manage to get to it, I'm just going to make it remain on my TBR until it is done or until I've DNF'd it. So what I've gone ahead and done is I've allowed myself the king to be a wild card. That can kind of mean whatever I want it to mean in the moment. So maybe a king is just skipping a prompt entirely and I don't read a book. Or maybe it's a mood read. So maybe I land on a prompt and I'm not necessarily super excited about it and the king will just allow me to mood read whatever I want and just kind of be a free pick. And then we have the Joker. Now the Joker acts like the sorry in my TBR game. And so basically what happens is if I draw a Joker, whatever color I draw, that pawn has to go back to start and then I have to take a punishment prompt. Only instead of punishment prompts that I've predetermined, I've allowed my Pawtrons to go ahead and provide me with a lot of different prompts that they would like to see me satisfy. Now, a lot of them did take this as a challenge to find prompts that I would find as a punishment, but they didn't have to. You know, they could just give me any kind of prompt that they wanted to because I knew that they were going to come up with a lot of unique ideas that I wouldn't have already thought about, and they certainly did. And like I said, some of them are definitely going to be challenging. I am definitely going to consider them a punishment, and others are just going to be a little bit more difficult or something that I would never have thought of before. But I mean, they can continuously recommend me prompts at any point. There's a thread in the Discord for that, so they can just do it on their whim and I will add them as they come in. All right, so I think that's the extent of all of the rule changes that I've made to my TBR game. Now let's go ahead and talk about my challenge cup because she is back. For the most part, this challenge cup is literally just that, a challenge cup, because primarily what is in here are all of the prompts that I need to satisfy for all of the reading challenges that I'm completing in 2025. And there are a lot of really complicated prompts out there this year that I'm really nervous about. So a lot of these are going to take a lot of thought. Most of these I do not have a plan for. So most of these I'm going to have to take some time to figure out what I'm going to read. This cup also does contain all of the physically owned TBR books that I have not read. And that's it. That's the extent of what is in this cup. So every single month prior to getting into the gameplay, I'm going to pull 4 to 5 of these challenge prompts. And I am going to hope that I can double up as much as possible so that a book that I read for one challenge is going to satisfy a challenge prompt for another challenge, or that any of the books that I've selected for my TBR gameplay are going to satisfy challenge prompts. So now that all of the housekeeping is out of the way, we are going to go ahead and pull our very first challenge prompt of 2025. And I was smart this time, guys, and I made the font a lot bigger. So the pieces are also a lot bigger. Okay, here we go. a book set in a fictional location. Well, I think that was pretty kind to me because I do believe that I will be reading at least one book set in a fictional location for January. My Patreon is currently in the process of picking our very first series read along, and I believe 2 of the 3 options are set in completely fictional locations. So if one of those is picked, then I will definitely be able to easily satisfy it. I'm gonna go ahead and leave this prompt for one of those books. All right, let's go ahead and do draw number 2. All right, got it. All That Is Mine I Carry With Me. Okay, that is a book on my physical TBR, and that is 100% perfect, and you are going to find out why in just a minute. So I'm going to save talking about this for a little bit later in this TBR video. All right, let's do number 4. Got it? Ooh, this is a short one. From Lukov with Love. Okay, the reason that I have this in here is because I recently purchased a set of Mariana Zapata books from Fairyloot. It contained All Roads Lead Here, The Wall of Winnipeg and Me, and then it contained the dust jacket of From Lukov with Love that would match the other 2. They had previously released a special edition of From Lukov with Love, but it just had like the original dust jacket on there. So for those people who had purchased that special edition, if they also purchased this new set, they can then have a matching dust jacket. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm actually going to switch this to The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. And there's a couple of reasons for this, but this is not actually one that I currently own at this time. I do need to get it, but this was going to be on my TBR for another reason. And so again, I'm going to refrain from talking about this any further until a little bit further on in the TBR video, but I'm going to go ahead and pop this back in the challenge cup and just switch it for this one. They're both Mariana Zapata. They're both on my TBR. I don't have a problem doing that, especially since I don't currently physically own this one at the moment, and I do need to get myself a copy. Okay, that was 3, I believe. So let's go ahead and do one more at least and see what I get. Okay, got one. Non-human antagonist. Okay, so this could potentially be a challenging one for me. I'm going to have to take a moment to think about this. Okay, I actually don't know why I thought that would be hard, because one of the first fantasies that I do plan on reading in 2025, and hopefully I can read it pretty promptly so that I am able to keep up with my own Patreon series read along, is Empire of the Damned by J. Kristoff. I know that this is not the cover, obviously. This is a fabric dust jacket that I ordered from Charlie and Vox, but as you can see, it was already in here prepped and ready. But I think that this is the perfect push that I need to go ahead and read this book. I remember enjoying Empire of the Vampire, but I don't remember enjoying Empire of the Vampire to the extent that I've enjoyed a lot of other J. Kristoff reads. I found that it was very, very long. It was definitely very action-packed, and that typically doesn't work for me. And so I don't remember a lot of the details. I'm going to have to read like a spoiler series recap before I jump into this one to be prepared, and I was already going to be doing that. So I feel like this is very fortuitous, because this is the push that I need to go ahead and read this chunker. I feel that this is perfect. I should hopefully be able to finish this. And my goal is really to keep on top of reading chunky series, even when I don't feel like it, even when it's chaotic and busy and I can't seem to find the time. I want to take the time every single day to read at least 5 or 10 pages, no matter what is going on. So this is definitely the push that I needed to read this book. All right, since I do already have plans on doubling up with some of these, I am going to go ahead and pull a 5th one this time. Okay, got it. A translated novel from Asia. Okay, I knew I should not have pushed my luck. This is probably one of the prompts that I was least looking forward to, but when I did do that video talking about all of the reading challenges that I'm doing, you guys left some recommendations that you thought that I would really like, and there was one that really stuck out to me. So let me go ahead and pull up that video and find it. Okay, I did find the book. It is a book called The Devotion of Suspect X by Kigo Higashino. Yasuko Hanawako is a divorced single mother who thought she had finally escaped her abusive ex-husband Tagashi. When he shows up one day to extort money from her, threatening both her and her teenage daughter Masato, the situation quickly escalates into violence, and Tagashi ends up dead on her apartment floor. Overhearing the commotion, Yasuko's next-door neighbor, middle-aged high school mathematics teacher Ishigami, offers his help, disposing not only of the body, but plotting the cover-up step by step. Okay, I like this next-door neighbor character. When the body turns up and is identified, Detective Kusanagi draws the case, and Yasuko comes under suspicion. Kusanagi is unable to find any obvious holes in Yasuko's manufactured alibi, and yet is still sure sure that there's something wrong. Kusanagi brings in Dr. Manabu Yukawa, a physicist and college friend who frequently consults with the police. Yukawa, known to the police by the nickname Professor Galileo, went to college with Ishigami. After meeting up with him again, Yukawa is convinced that Ishigami had something to do with the murder. What ensues is a high-level battle of wits as Ishigami tries to protect Yasuko by outmaneuvering and outthinking Yukawa, who faces his most clever and determined opponent yet. That actually sounds right up my alley, so that is going to be the book that I use to satisfy the translated Asian fiction prompt. Alright, and now the moment you've all been waiting for, let's go ahead and finally get into the first gameplay of the next round of the My Bad TBR game. Alright everyone, we are back. It is finally time to start the next round of the My Bad TBR game. As you can see, the board has been reset. All of the colors are back in start except for one from each color, which is actively out on the playing field as per the rules that I have set for myself. I have 3 decks of playing cards here. They are all now back in play. I was removing them as I was drawing them so they wouldn't get drawn twice, but they are now back in play. And for the time being at least, or maybe even permanently, I'm going to be using a color generator wheel rather than those little color tiles. So as per usual, we are going to start with our standard 6 draws and we are going to see what we get. Okay, green is the lucky color that gets to start off this round of gameplay. I'm just going to go ahead and preemptively move the board so that we can see where green lands. All right, we have drawn a 10. So with the 10, I can either move forward straight 10 or I can move backwards 1 and draw again. Really, with this card, it's entirely going to depend on the prompt that I land on. Since we are just starting this round of gameplay, I think that I'm just going to go ahead and move forward 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, that is most recent acquisition, which I can certainly do. All right, so my very first draw was the number 10 and I spun the color green, and for that it was to read my most recent acquisition. So one of my most recent acquisitions was actually that Fairy Loot Special Edition box of the Mariana Zapata books, including The Wall of Winnipeg and Me. That's why I kind of wanted to switch from Lukov with Love to this. This says, Vanessa Mazur knows she's doing the right thing. She shouldn't feel bad for quitting. Being an assistant housekeeper / fairy godmother to the top defensive end in the National Football Organization was always supposed to be temporary. She has plans, and none of them include washing extra large underwear longer than necessary. But when Aiden Graves shows up at her door wanting her to come back, she's beyond shock. For 2 years, the man known as the Wall of Winnipeg couldn't find it in him to tell her good morning or congratulate her on her birthday. Now he is asking for the unthinkable. What do you say to the man who is used to getting everything he wants? I've heard really amazing things about this one, and so I'm excited to get into another Mariana Zapata now that I've had a successful attempt with one of her other books. All right, it is time for draw number 2. All right, this time it's blue, so I'm going to once again flip the board. Because I drew a 2, I have to find 2 books to satisfy whatever prompt I land on. Now with a 2, I typically can either move a pawn from start or move forward 2, but since I have no other active blue pawns on the playing field, I can't move another blue pawn out from start, so I am going to have to go ahead and move forward 2, 1, 2, and that is choose pawn color, so that essentially means that the next draw I don't have to spin the wheel. I get to choose whatever color I want to move. Since this didn't actually land me on a prompt to choose a book, I will go ahead and select 2 books for the next prompt that I land on. All right, next I drew a 2 and the color blue. I ended up needing to move forward 2, and that landed me on choose pawn color. So there's no prompt associated with this, no book chosen. Basically, it just means that the next round I'm able to select which color I move. I don't have to spin the wheel for that one. So let's go ahead and move right on into draw number 3. I'm going to wait and decide which color I move depending on the card that I draw. So I have to be really, really strategic with this. Now with the number 6, my patrons actually get to choose the books that I read. So what I'm going to do is, based on the prompt, I'm going to provide them with a handful of selections, and they are going to get to select the books that I read. In this instance, they are going to have to select 2 books for me. So let's quickly see where each of these pawns is going to land. So blue, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, blue on the cover, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, multiple POVs. If I move this red guy over here, that lands on booktuber recommendation. And if I move that green one over there, that is name or number in the title. So because my patrons are going to have to select, and I actually have to pick 2 books for this, I want to keep it as general as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and do blue on the cover. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, and then my next draw was a number 6. And as I mentioned earlier, this means that my patrons get to choose what I read. And since I drew a 2, and that also means that I have to double up with the books that I read for a prompt, I needed to actually land on a prompt that I selected a book for. So in this instance, I chose to once again move blue. This landed me on the prompt to read blue on the cover. I liked that because it was very vague and it gave me a lot of options. So I actually posted a poll on my Patreon and it had about 7 different options. And the only one that was a clear winner was Pictures of You by Emma Gray. What I'm understanding is this follows a main character who was in a terrible car accident with her husband. Her husband didn't make it, and when she wakes up, she has memory loss. She doesn't remember anything from the last several years. She thinks that she is a teenager, and the only person that can really help her is one of the people that she does remember from her teenage years. I believe he could have been like an old friend or an old flame, and I think maybe they could have their own little love story in this. I'm not entirely sure. I've heard amazing things about Emma Gray. A lot of people really enjoyed The Last Love Note, which I have not read, but is definitely on my radar, especially if I love this one. So I am excited to get to this. Now, as of this moment while filming, there is actually currently a 4-way tie between some of the other books in that poll. And so because of that, I'm going to make an executive decision and select All That Is Mine I Carry With Me by William Landay. As you will have seen, will now double up with that poll from the Challenge Cup to read this book. Another reason why I really wanted to get to this sooner rather than later was because this was a gift from Sherry. Thank you so much to Sherry. She is one of my subscribers and she is now also one of my patrons. And I really wanted to go ahead and read this as soon as possible, but I never got around to it before the end of the year. So it makes sense that it is going to be one of the first books that I read in 2025. So I believe that this is going to be kind of a mystery that starts in the 1970s. It follows a family whose mother who has gone missing, and everybody thinks her husband did something with her. He is never convicted, he is never charged, and so they end up having to live with him, a man who could have gotten rid of their mother. But then 2 decades later, so I believe we are now going to be in the mid to late 90s, the body of the mother is found. And so that kind of reopens everything, and the children are going to have to choose sides. Do they stick with their father who has raised them, or do they pick the sides of other people who think that their father is guilty? And I am really, really here for this. I am looking forward to this one. All right, now it is time for draw number 4. All right, it is yellow. Let me go ahead and flip the board. Okay, I drew an 8. So with this one, I just move forward 8, but I can either choose to keep the prompt or I can go ahead and draw for my Patreon pick mug if I'm not enjoying the prompt. So let's see what we get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yellow on the cover. Okay, another very general prompt, and I think that I'm going to go ahead and stick with that one. All right, and then I drew the number 8 and the color yellow, and I ultimately decided to keep the prompt that I landed on, which was to read a book with yellow on the cover. And for this, I'm stretching it just a little bit because the book that I have chosen is The Briar Club by Kate Quinn. As you can see, it is a very bright golden color. We're going to go with it. I have to read this for the Bookworm Bitches book club that I moderate over on Goodreads, and so I thought that this would be a good way to fit it in. I don't know too terribly much about the story, but it is a Kate Quinn. I will probably read all of her historical fictions, but I believe this follows a woman who is in a boarding house and all of the people that she meets during this time. But I think there also could be a little bit of a mystery going on here. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've read the synopsis of this one, but I am excited about it. And like I said, I have to read it for the Bookworm Bitches book club. So I'm glad that I was able to double up with that as well. All right, we have green again, and since green is all the way on the other side, I am once again going to need to flip the board. All right, so queen, it means that the pawn can immediately move into its safety zone, and the safety zone squares remain blank because those are going to be challenge cup
pools. All right, so green is already in his safety zone very early on in gameplay, and hopefully nothing happens to that. But for this one, I will be pulling an extra prompt from the challenge cup.
All right, and then I drew a queen and spun a green. That means that already we have one of our pawns in the safety zone. But because there's no prompts associated with those squares, I'm bringing back out the challenge cup. So this is going to be a very challenge heavy kind of month. So I'm really hoping that this one is kind to me because we are starting off with a bang. Okay, I've got it. Has short chapters. Okay, so this is normally a prompt that I would try to satisfy during the natural course of my reading because I don't know offhand what books will satisfy this. Let me see if I can go ahead and figure out a book right now. If not, I will come back to this later. Okay, so when I was going to the Goodreads group for this challenge, people are able to post like what they plan on reading for the challenge. And a book I found that's actually on my virtual TBR is a book called Call the Canaries Home by Laura Barrow. It says 3 estranged sisters reconnect in their Louisiana hometown to face an unresolved past in a heartfelt novel about family, grief, secrets, and forgiveness. So first of all, I love that this is set in Louisiana. I live right next door to Louisiana. I'm very familiar with the state at this point, so I think that this is going to be very atmospheric, as has been other books about Louisiana that I've read. So I believe that this follows a missing sister. It says, Georgia went missing from their small Louisiana town, fracturing their family. 28 years later, Savannah convinces her estranged older sisters, Rayanne and Sue Ellen, to honor the pact they made as children and retrieve the time capsule they buried in their old backyard. But coming home means confronting old ghosts and their stubborn grandmother. Sifting through the artifacts, they come across a photograph taken on the day Georgia disappeared and spot a familiar woman lingering in the background. While Sue Ellen and Rayanne want to move on with their lives, Savannah is determined to find the woman and perhaps a clue to the past. When old tensions, rivalries, and memories resurface, the sisters must reconsider what they thought they knew about that fateful day, about each other, and about themselves. On their search to uncover what happened to Georgia, each of them will discover what Grandma has known all along. Family is everything. Now, obviously, I have never read this book, so I cannot speak to the validity of the short chapters, and short is going to be relative to the person who's reading it, right? So I really don't know how short the chapters are, but I'm going to take their word for it. I'm going to read Call the Canaries Home. It's something that's been on my TBR for a little while now, ever since I first heard about the book, and it's something that I've never revisited, so I would like to go ahead and get it read to see if I like it and to see if I want to continue with this author in the future.
And we are going to go ahead and do the final draw. Okay, we have blue. Luckily, blue is just right here, so I'm not going to flip the board. Okay, ace is perfect because it means I can either move one from start or move forward one. And in order to make sure that I have more than one active blue on the playing field, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And that is a free space, meaning I don't need to choose a book to satisfy that. All right, and I think that we are going to go ahead and end here. A solid start to this round of gameplay. I'm excited to see where it takes us in 2025.
All right, and then the final draw was an ace. I spun the color blue, and that actually allowed me to get another blue pawn out on the playing field. That is a free space, so I don't have to select any book for that. All right, and then the last couple of things that I have on my TBR, first of all, is going to be the very first pick for my Patreon book club. January's book club selection is A Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young, which y'all know I'm very, very excited about. So that is going to be another one added to my TBR. And then last but certainly not least, we need to go ahead and select my Pawtron pick. So I'm very nervous about this, y'all, because there are a lot of things in here that I would not have picked up on my own. So this is definitely going to cause me to read outside of my comfort zone for sure. Okay, we got it. Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent. So this was recommended to me by Andrea B. So thank you so much to Andrea for your suggestion. You now get to leave me another suggestion in the Discord, so please feel free to do so when you've thought of one. I'm really excited about this one because Eva from Pretty Purple Polka Dots absolutely loves this book too. So I'm really excited to see what I think about this. All right, everyone, that is it. I think it was a very successful first round for 2025. I'm very excited, if not a little bit nervous, about a lot of the books that I have selected for January. If you've made it to the end of this video, please comment down below and let me know some of the books that you plan to start 2025 with. Let me know if you enjoy some of the changes that I made to my TBR game this time around, and if you have read any of the books on my TBR, I would love to know your thoughts about that as well. Or if you've made it to the end of this video and you are not feeling chatty, go ahead and leave me a football emoji in honor of The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. And as always, if you like this video or if you just like me, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I typically post 2 videos a week, one on Wednesdays, one on Sundays, and I would love to connect with you in any of those future videos or on any of my social media platforms, including my newly announced Patreon, all of which will be linked down below along with any books featured in this video. Until next time, y'all. Bye.